Welcome back to Gear and Beer. Today, my esteemed guest is the Nostradamus numero dos from North Carolina.
Oh, wow.
Mr. Renn Anderson. Renn.
Second dose nos.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Second dose nos. There we go.
There we go.
That's going to be the parentheses on this episode.
Excellent, man.
Second dose nos.
Let's go.
You're a North Carolina booster. That's what you are.
I guess so. Yeah. 3 weeks later, or how many weeks later now?
Man, that episode, I've been having YouTube be stalling on processing my junk, and it's still not up. So hopefully it will have be. I didn't even look when I got home.
It will have be.
It will have been. No, it made me so mad earlier that I couldn't even look at it when I got home. So I haven't even looked. So
sure.
Surely
but by the
it's
time
uploaded.
these lovely people see this, they will have seen that.
That will be up. They will have seen it.
Nostradamus Uno from North Carolina.
Yeah. So yeah. Yeah. There's no clever way to say the first one like there is the nos dos or the dos nos.
The Tim Galloway episode's up.
Is it up?
On YouTube?
Okay.
Yeah. 6 hours ago.
Do we want to just delete this beginning and start over?
No.
I don't delete stuff if I can avoid
You're
it.
fine.
Hi, everyone.
Anyway, so
As we were
Renn
saying-
Anderson from Franklin, Tennessee.
I live in Franklin now. Yes, sir. I was born and raised in Wilmington, North Carolina, as you mentioned. And that's where One Tree Hill was filmed.
Oh.
Dawson's Creek was also filmed there.
Oh, Dawson from the Creek and shit.
Yeah. And when I grew up, I used to go find where they were filming and just yell so that they had to interrupt their filming because the mics are so sensitive for those scenes. And I thought that was
very
cool.
helpful.
I thought it was cool. I was a kid. I mean,
I think it's pretty cool. Because now you can always say, bro, remember this one time when I interrupted Dawson's Creek?
yeah. We thought we were being cool.
You were.
Now we're... Yeah.
You were. Dawson's Creek needed to face a little adversity. At that time, they were flying pretty high.
I think I was their test, and I think they passed. They kept it going. They ended well.
Yeah, they sure did. James Vanderbeek. Yeah, Dawson from the Creek and shit is when James Vanderbeek was in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, and they first stumbled onto him, and it's like, oh, yo, it's Dawson from the Creek and shit.
There we go.
So I will never, ever be able to hear the word Creek or Dawson and that not pop into my mind.
Right on, man.
Little insight into how brains go wrong.
Yes.
So you're a guitar player, you're a bass player, you're a singer, you're a songwriter. You're in the right place for that.
My man. Yeah, thanks for having me. I also love gear, and I love beer. And
you have quite a knowledge of both, and that is what this show is about. A couple of idiots bringing in smart people.
Oh, nice. Well, thanks for having me, guys. I play guitar, I play bass. Lately, I've been playing bass, but also...
Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of, you gigging on bass, and then recently, that's all I've seen.
Yeah. It's been fun, man. I went on a deep dive. That's actually a funny story. After the pandemic shut everything down, everybody started sending off mobile files. And when it used to get in a room together and make songs, now it's all like, hey, here's a drum groove. Can you play something on top of this? And then we're just basically emailing files back and forth. Well, I had a deadline for a record.
I love that, by the way.
Say what?
I love that, by the way.
I love it too, man. It's
a cool way to create.
It's really, really cool. And it's just widened everyone's horizons. I started working with people in Hong Kong and New York and Miami and LA, of course, and more regularly than having to go out and work in LA and do that thing. It was like, oh no, I can just set you up for next week off my, Zoom meeting and everything. Anyway, long story short.
Sorry, I do that a lot.
Yeah. We'll take a few rabbit trails here today. But I was making a record for a project, licensing project with me and my friends called Model Citizen. I'm the singer of that project. And we needed bass parts done, and we're trying to keep everything in-house. And I was sending all the files off.
That's wise.
To my buddy. Yeah, right. Keep it on the team. Keep the team tight. And the mix engineer is like my hero. His name's Matt Huber, and he's unbelievable. He makes everything that I ever send him sound better than anybody. And no offense to anyone else I've worked with, but man, I guess as a singer, I listen for how do people make my voice sound? And there's some ego attached to that. And the way Matt makes my voice stick out of a track, it's amazing.
It's not really ego, it's just your vision.
I guess so. Yeah. It's so fun to hear what he does to a song.
If what you want your art to sound like is ego, then sure, it's ego.
Yeah,
I guess you can argue
right.
that at a certain extent, but
That's
that doesn't
actually a
sound,
good way to
that
put
doesn't
it.
sound like what you're describing to me.
Cool. I'm obsessed with his talent, man. He's so gifted as an engineer and a mixing guy. And
Everybody, is drawn to different sounds and like different approaches towards, depending on the level of listener, I guess it depends whether that's something they're considering or not. But I would say that to the nerdy and educated ear, or the professional ear, that's something that a lot of people pay attention to.
Yeah.
And like there are dudes that are like Brendan O'Brien. There's other dudes that are like Rick Rubin, and everybody's like,
sure.
I just kind of like it all. So
Yeah, right.
I like different opinions. I like different sounds. You judged on our jam earlier, so are you. You like a lot of different sounds and
I love
styles.
everything, man. I've been just so distracted. I think if you could put one word on my music career, it would be ADHD. And I guess that's an acronym of 4 words, but
That's true. I was gonna let that slide.
or I don't know. Anyway, I was sending files off to Matt Huber, my beloved sound engineer and mix guy, and I sent off. I just had a bass lying around. Everyone's got like the Mexican P bass. That's what I had at the time, and he asked for bass files, and I didn't know what to do. I just plugged it into my interface and I tracked some parts and sent it off. And he messaged me back. He was like, "Hey man, like this these tones kind of sound like crap. Can you come in? Like, is there any way like you'd feel safe coming in and playing the stuff on my rig?" And I was like, I was really stung. I wasn't used to anybody telling me that I sounded bad. And with guitar, it's like I got my thing. I know how to make that sound pretty good and do all the things and all the tricks and the pedals and all the gear and all the different amp for different gig, all that thing. But I really didn't know what I was doing for bass. So all of a sudden I got this guy that is like my hero telling me I sound like crap, which it makes it hurt even worse when it's someone you respect and love.
It stings.
Matt, I love you. I'm giving you a lot of credit here. But basically it sent me down this rabbit hole like, okay, how do I send away good bass tones? And so then I was like, looking at plugins, watching YouTube tutorials, all these things, and just absorbed into this world of bass. And then all of a sudden playing live bass after telling people that I'm really having fun playing bass. Like if you ever need a bass player, blah. So starting playing live, and then the emotional arc as a bass player of like carrying the song. You play with different drummers, and some drummers are waiting for you to tell them where to go. Other drummers are just always 100%, and then you get to kind of, dip in and out of a dynamic range to carry the song either up or down. There's all this weird chemistry that you never listen to when you're a guitar player.
If you haven't done that chair of the gig, you don't really realize how important it can be. And you don't always have to line up every note with the kick drum or whatever the drummer's doing. But if you two guys can't, or you two guys, if those two chairs,
the rhythm section,
are not listening to each other, will not listen to each other, the pocket will never be a Genco. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, that's a good way to put it. But anyway, it just introduced a whole new set of problems to me as a guitar player primarily, and as a songwriter. I'm thinking about the melody. I'm thinking about the lyrics. I'm thinking about, if I'm not in a songwriting chair, I'm thinking about how do I like complement the melody, and how do I add energy and maybe, bring the melody to the next level, all these things. And
so what was your first, when you were first having to make these tracks, like, did you have a particular thought about how you were going to go about that, not knowing the bass, like, kind of where it sits, and like, you kind of know because you're a musician. You're obviously a professional musician. It's not like you've never heard of the bass guitar before.
I will say,
having to execute, did you have like a particular thing you were going to try to do?
Yeah, I will say, I mean, this was like for an indie rock project, and all the bass parts that I had played ended up on the record. They weren't the wrong parts, and they weren't even necessarily played wrong, but I just didn't have a good signal chain. Then I'm like, okay, what happens when you introduce tubes into a bass signal chain? Can you get by with the UAD plugins and all these things that are like kind of quick, common professional etiquette? It's good enough for the record. Or what? How much more do you gain? I bought a UA 610, the original tube unit. I've got a Palmer DI, that's a tube unit.
PDI CTC?
I got one.
Dude.
It's amazing.
I found one, and I didn't buy it, and the next day I was like, no, I'm buying that. Gone.
Bro, yeah.
You can't find them. I
got
can't
one.
find them.
I got one. We'll talk about it. Just let me buy your P-Bass. But anyway.
Nope. Nope.
I started getting all these tube preamps.
Neither Pete Sternberg or Brad Hill or any of the rest of you guys trying to buy it.
Oh man, what a great bass you've got, man.
It's a good bass.
So anyway, I started okay, obviously most of the bass is not heard in a track, it's felt, right? In general.
So this is something that your Nostradamus numero uno kept saying anytime we asked him a question, and it made me like really think about how true it is. Every question that we had for him about like approach or gear, he always just would start with, well, it just depends.
Yeah.
And and
that's a big depends.
It really does depend, because if you're playing like let's say you're playing a grungy or like a broken down like raw rock band kind of a track, or you're playing a 90s country song, like those are two very different bass feel sounds and like tones, and like that, or at least that's what I thought. So I'm sorry, that was my wheels are turning in there.
Yeah. Let's go.
I was listening to Jerry Flowers Tech check his bass rig one time, and he plays the whole show, or he did at this time. The whole show had what I would call medium overdrive on his bass tones, and he's playing sheds, and like when they would go between the two in sound check, it was just like somebody turned the amp off, and you could feel it, but you could not hear anything. Mm-hmm. The way the bass set in a mix like that was like one of my first realizations, because that was about 2 years into me playing bass that I heard him do that.
Yeah.
And all that to say, it depends,
There's a lot of
whether you feel it or you hear it.
Yeah. And that's really fascinating, because I was trying to get into this world of bass. I was like, I'm going to get a bass that's been upgraded and all these things. So I was like, I want a 5-string. I was going to play for this gospel artist named Dante Bowe at a church conference in a church down in Texas called Upper Room. So it's church music. Not everybody would know who that is, but the people who are into that genre would probably know who those two people are and the two artists. And I was like,
where is that? Where in Texas is Upper Room?
In Dallas.
I don't know Upper Room.
I've never heard of it. I lived in Dallas for decades and played in the church scene.
Kind of new, I would say, on the like church singing their songs.
Not too many decades. I'm not that old.
Yeah, this guy looks young for 45 or whatever. Just kidding. But yeah, they've got a lot of songs on the scene for like, I guess, charismatic churches singing now. So amazing place. I've been down there a couple of times, but I was playing for those two at this church conference at my church, Legacy Nashville, and I was like, I want to have a 5-string bass. So I was like a gut-wrenching, like, I'm so reckless. I just make decisions and then I live with the consequences. And so I went out to the spot. I bought this bass, and in the shop, plugged into their little like 115 guitar center, whatever. It sounded amazing. Yeah, it was like, I don't know what it was. And then I took it and I played it on a big sound system, and it just sounded gross. It sounded so muddy. I couldn't hear a single note. It was so disgusting to me that I couldn't hear what was happening. And then I started to realize, like, I thought, first of all, that I just hated the pickups that were in it. They were a common, I'll just say it. I don't have any affiliation with the company. They were Seymour Duncan basslines pickups, which is a very common aftermarket upgrade for basses. And then all of a sudden
what's the line? Seymour what?
Seymour Duncan basslines. It's just their bass pickup.
Okay.
And no, like, I've played some amazing Seymour Duncan pickups, but I didn't understand why I didn't like them. And here's where the depends comes in. Because all of a sudden I'm like, oh wait, I'm playing on a great big sound system with subs, and the low end is too much, and there's not enough in the mains, and the crossover is throwing all the frequencies down to the subs, not enough up to the mains, and that way you can't hear anything. But then,
like an array or something.
Yeah, an array sound system. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, the reason why the bass lines are amazing is because they make a small portable bass amp sound like subs at a big sound system. But then when you actually put bassline pickups in my opinion, this is all just opinion, but I realized that when I took those bassline pickups to a big sound system, it just was muddy and it got lost.
Overcompensation, essentially.
It depends on where the crossover is in that particular system as well.
Exactly. I guess there are a number of different factors at play that are out of my hands, but I came to find out that when I'm playing on really large sound systems, I prefer a lot of the bass energy to be through the mains. And there's this like weird mid presence that you have to look for as a bass player to be heard.
Bass is the hardest thing to EQ because you can play rooms that look and like feel identical and turn on your bass rig.
Yeah.
And you have to EQ it just as night and day as the rooms are similar, you know?
Yeah.
And that took the longest for me to figure out. It's like I can't do an ears scenario. And I know great bass players that do it and always sound perfect, and I don't know how they do it. But they play in an ears setting with no EQ other than like a volume and a tone, like on like a P bass or something. And it's like you like tossing me an anchor if I'm drowning. Like if I can't EQ, because if I can't hear the bass right, like I have a hard enough time playing when I hear it perfectly. So if I can't hear it, like I'm all thumbs, you know, and I can't lock in. And
well, that's kind of the thing. Is usually you're used to showing up with a P bass or a passive bass or whatever. You're used to being able to like
plug into
roll the tone knob down to where it feels like, oh, this feels good in the mix. But with the Seymour Duncans that I had in the sound system context, the room context, everything, the
just
crossover
sending
context,
so much information to the subs.
It was so much low and sub that it was just like, it felt weighty and a problem. It felt like a problem in the mix. And so, but then that's exactly why it's the perfect Broadway bass. It's the perfect one to go to a small room, plug into a small amp,
fill it up
immediately without having to boost the 80 and the 250 or whatever is usually like the first thing the sound guy does to make it feel like warm and subby. So it was a lesson for me because I was so new to it. I just thought I had a preference until I stepped back from the preference and understood like, oh, no. There were so many different factors at play. There is just it depends.
Well, and there's a third factor that we haven't even talked about as far as bass playing is concerned, and that is how you play a song. Like, you should, in my opinion, and in the general consensus opinion, play a bass line in a arena or a shed or a stadium or a really large theater or any large room with a lot of air moving around.
Yeah.
You have to play that way differently than you would play P-bass into a 410 in a shotgun bar in New York, on a funk gig or something.
Right.
Those are two extremely different air spaces, and when you try to play a busy line in a big space, it's like none of that comes across, and it just ends up sounding...
The subs are just going...
And
people are like on the back of a motorcycle, like a Harley Davidson.
Well, it's more importantly than that. They're like... You can feel it, but you're obscuring your own your own pocket by doing that because the air can't start and stop those giant subs throwing big waves out there. It just doesn't react the same. And I had to have a drummer when I first Billy's when I first started playing. It was like, hey man, you can't do, and basically say what I just said, and I was like, okay, never considered that.
Yeah,
and
right.
The EQ thing for me, this is just my own personal experience. The EQ thing and like learning how to treat each room both from an EQ and a playing standpoint.
Yeah.
Made me a lot happier with what I was able to do.
Yeah, my man. Well, and that brings up a great conversation too, is like how valuable is stepping outside of the moment where you're playing and listening to it in context. How valuable is that to actually choosing something better to play next time? Or
totally,
and when I was
we talked about this last time, watching game tape, man. You gotta watch game tape.
Exactly.
How do you grow? How do you know? You know in the moment, but then a bunch of other things happen before you get to a place of reflection. In the moment, you can't reflect, right?
Yeah. It's so crazy, man, because, you can dial in the perfect sound on your amp, and then, your delays are trailed. They're just mixed in perfectly. And then you hit a compressor too hard in the signal chain, and now the delayed signal is all of a sudden as loud as the main dry signal, and then you've got to tweak everything. And is it like, you might gut wrench reach for the delay pedal and tweak that first, and maybe that's the right thing to do, but also like think critically, like, oh, I probably can like turn down the compressor a little bit, let some of that flux signal get through this, let the dynamics get through.
Compression live on guitar a lot?
Not necessarily after the fact. In fact, because of COVID, I think most of the stuff I'm doing now is in a studio context or in my home studio. I've got the aux rigged up. I've got third power amps. I've got a divided by 13 that I really love, a Bad Cat that I really love as well. And, I got a Champ that I bought off Michael Britt. It's an amazing little tiny speaker that just feels right and sets right in the
Champs
mix.
mic up great. I mean, you can't do a single gig with one unless it's a solo gig.
I know,
but man, a Vox AC4 that does the same.
Yeah,
has the same effect. It sounds terrible on gigs because it's not loud enough and it's always too overdriven. But in the studio, it sits just right.
It sits just right, man. It's got no like unnecessary low end, and then it just kind of fits between like the snare and the cymbals. It's just
man. You don't have to do anything to it,
right?
Yeah.
And so that's been fun, and yet like because I'm just growing as an engineer, this has been the process for me. It's like, oh man, like I was so happy with the tone I had in the room, right in front of the amp, and then I have a Universal Apollo, so I'm printing off everything that I've got in the line, and then I get it on tape, and sometimes it's like, I should have just not printed that compressor to the signal because it messed up everything, and it's so gross now. And now it's become a game of recording everything without delay, basically, and then figuring out how to work my plugins to sound like the pedals that I'm so familiar with. And, when you got pedals that are as good as they are, like Strymon delays are as good as it gets. My buddies let me borrow the Universal Starlight, which is also as good as it gets.
Yeah.
Like all these really convincing sounding tape units or analog units. It's like, man, these are so easy to get the perfect sound, but how do I approach it in the DAW so that the producer I'm sending the files to has a little bit more freedom to adjust the mix the way he sees fit, as opposed to him saying like, hey, I love the part, but it's a little too wet. Can you give it to me dry? And then you're like, oh, I have to go play the whole thing again and reset everything.
Well, and more to my point, he and I have been talking about this a little bit. It's like a certain amount of the magic is lost to play a part totally dry like that.
It is.
Yeah. So I guess it's one thing if after the fact you play it down and it's all wet and you have your part or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you can just like learn that and be able to play it dry and go back and do it. That's one thing, but at least for me to create and I'm often creating by myself in a room.
Yeah.
I have to find inspiration amongst the Skynet of gear that laying around, you know?
Yeah. And that's for me, that's been like, how do we stay relevant, in an age that's like primarily digital, sending out files? And there is something less inspiring about pulling up a plugin and then just like clicking little knobs to the right point to see if it sounds good. So what I do is like in my spare time, I'll find like the perfect sound on my pedal board, and then I'll literally set a test for myself. How close can I get it to sound in the box to the way that inspired me live? And that's when the UA is really valuable, because then you can turn the speaker off. You can send it directly to your studio monitors so that all that you're hearing is what the amp is giving that. I've actually been running the Palmer DI after the UA. There's something that happens. And
how do you run that?
So I'm doing amp into the UA, and then I'm sending the UA to the Palmer. And the Palmer, the tube in it, just like makes everything feel real again to me.
So you're coming out of the out, but between
the output of the UA,
the mono out. Okay.
And it's very subtle, right? But there's something. My buddy Michael Pope, he's a session guitar player, great guitar player, and he was running his UA into a pair of like 512 pre's or something like that, and he was like, it just fixed. He's got words for it that I don't. He was like, there's like this 2K, 3K range in the mids that doesn't quite feel real on anything digital. Like regardless of what it is,
I know exactly what he's talking about.
There's this like weird mid thing. And he said if you put it into a piece of outboard gear, and he was running his through 512s, I think, or 1073s maybe, it just cleaned it up, made everything feel natural again. For me, I've been doing that with the Palmer. And for me, it saves it. It's like, oh yeah, like I used to like feel like this weird muddiness in that like really important region, especially if the vocal dies out and it's just the guitar. It's like that thing needs to be really tight.
So you're saying you use it on your guitar signal?
I've been using it on guitar signal as well. And again, it's all to taste. And there are probably people that can work the UA Apollo and know the digital preamps and everything. There are probably people who know that stuff better than I do and can get that kind of synthesis and organic feel through that stuff. But I just gotta I know that I'm the guy, because I'm so imbecilic when it comes to engineering. If it sounds great when I'm plugged in, I'm gonna play great. If it sounds average, I'm not gonna be inspired. And for the same reason that you love playing with your pedals, if I'm not inspired, I'm probably not going to come up with the best material. So my constant search is, how am I going to get this a little bit better? For me, I found that a preamp or a tube box between the UA and the interface adds this like bloom that you can't get when it's plugged straight in.
Deer and beer.
No, what I wanted to ask you is, okay, you kind of mentioned outboard gear, but have you ever, for example, thrown your delay in, like in an as if it were outboard gear?
Yeah, like in an effects loop.
Yeah, and then you record like a wet channel, or
I haven't thought to do that yet, but I think I probably got to get smart like that. That sounds like something I need to try.
So the other thing I was thinking is, like you said, you have an aux, and like I love the aux, but one of the issues, right, is that it's not stereo. So
right.
Like one of the best parts about either of your delays is, and I can't remember what you said you had, but I'm sure it's amazing. You have several delays, and you've got that big sky.
That are printing stereo or sending stereo.
Yeah, they're
effects.
sending stereo, and then you have to basically sum to mono when you use the aux. So it's like, do you throw it in the effects loop, or do you like you reamp it?
I think that's a great question, and I think what usually it comes down to is almost no producers that I work with currently want a stereo guitar signal.
Yeah,
most of the time it's almost always, no, can you give me left and right? Single take mono. And then in that context,
like a mono file or a left and right mono?
Left and right mono.
So 2 tracks.
2 tracks.
Okay, that's how I always track.
And in which case, the delay really is, you got to really be light with it. And then almost like, I know guys that'll like, just send it to me the way you like it. And they trust me. And then working with a new producer, that's terrifying. It's like, no. Like, I'm going to give this to you dry. I'll print it. Usually, and again, that's why the whole DAW scenario of like plugins that work well, it's like I'll put the most convincing Soundtoys delay and reverb on the signal that I send that I can personally manufacture that sounds like my rig. The UA precision delay is amazing too.
Yeah.
And like I'll get whatever I can get there, and then almost always though too, that producer is going to send it to a mixing engineer, and the mixing engineer is going to be a second head to get past for the wet signal. So what I've come to find out is that almost always I'm going to track dry for the sake of the process, unless the producer is in the room with me and says, yes, that's perfect.
But you're monitoring wet?
Monitoring wet.
Yeah.
UA into tube pre, into the DAW, and then I put the plugins monitoring live.
Which is one of the great things about UA, because you're not using...
It's fascinating. It's the best thing
using
for the
DSP
process.
from I don't know if you have an Apollo or a pre or
Usually I'm not using the Apollo for the delays though, because I'm recording to Logic, or I use Logic, but it could have been
I use Logic as well.
So then I'll just have the plugins on,
We're a
and
Logic
then
family.
Right on, let's go. I'll leave the plugins monitoring live in Logic, and then I'll print a stem without the plugins, but then also with the plugins active. And that way the producer can kind of hear what I liked and what I thought was good. If he has a better, more organic sounding tape delay that he wants to reamp it through, he has the dries too. Blah, blah, blah. But again, that process is...
So the live monitoring wet is your solution.
That is my solution.
That's a good solution.
Yeah. That's essentially what I do. I was going to ask you, like, whenever you, for example, let's say that you're with the homies doing sync licensing stuff, and you want to send it to your I can't remember your name, but your friend who's, like your hero mix engineer.
Matt Huber.
Matt Huber. Like,
everybody hit him up.
Man, so like if you send that guy tracks, you're sending like anything that you did demo wise just to make it sound good to you. You're taking it all out. You're zeroing everything out, panning, and signal wise. Yeah. And you're sending him everything completely raw, and then maybe you send him like a rough mix.
Print as well.
Yeah, I'll usually do 2 folders because people don't like to have a headache figuring things out. I think that's probably the best advice for guys that are listening that are like, how do I get into this mobile session thing? It's like, make it easy to understand. Like, just organize your files. That way people
make
aren't
it very obvious where to drop them in, and they're right where they're supposed to go.
So what are the 2 folders, and what is in each folder?
I'll just say, like, and it depends on, because sometimes I'm tracking bass too, and I'm programming all these other things. So I'll just say, like, master instrument tracks, acoustic guitar folder. Within the acoustic guitar, each file name will be labeled, whether it's a direct like pickup signal, because sometimes that's useful to certain producers, or a mic signal. And then after that, like acoustic guitar, DI left, acoustic guitar, mic left. And then I usually will put after that, like if I have to break down the song into different sections, I'll put that last. So acoustic DI left chorus.
Oh, for sync licensing, are you breaking it down into different sections because they might
absolutely
want to cut it up into...
Yeah, because so much is done on the back end. Like, so much is like manipulated, especially like if you have ever worked with a licensing house too, they want stems that they can mute, that they can blah, blah, blah. Everything is so like piece by piece. I've had songs on, do you know the company Neo? It's a Chinese car company that is the biggest competitor to Tesla. It's an electric vehicle company. So at their worldwide global product debut, they played a song that my friend Taylor Matthews and I wrote and produced by a guy named Todd Clark in town.
Sick.
And the cool thing about it was the song, the whole commercial begins and you're like, this sounds kind of familiar, but it's not quite. They had hired a composer to take our stems and extend it out to like a 7-minute product debut video. Mm-hmm. So 5 minutes of the video is not our song at all, but because the guy had all the different stems, he could basically piece together a similar enough thing that it became this
he made a
7-minute synthesis. Exactly.
It's like almost DJing your piece.
Exactly.
Remix.
So exactly. So in the context of licensing, especially, maybe not even like maybe more so than, you know, country productions that are radio geared, that are they're aimed towards radio listeners, or like any other like playlisting, like less artist friendly but more sync friendly, right? Yeah. It's so important to have files that you can mute and build an emotional arc, even that exists outside of your vision for the song.
Sounds very similar to the, I used to build Ableton tracks for churches. Mm-hmm. Sounds very similar to that.
Exactly
sort
the
of
same
vibe.
idea. In fact, I work a lot with a company called MusicBed, and their primary demographic, they have two primary demographic, church videographers and wedding videographers.
Okay.
So because that is like my primary licensing house, I guess is the best way to say it, because that's what I make the most music for, that's kind of why I do the process that I do. Mm-hmm. Like I've made my process the most friendly for how do I make sure these stems are really obvious so that if someone in China sees the song and is pulling apart the stems, they can read everything and know, oh, this is exactly what that part is.
And they're like, oh, I can do a lot with this thing.
Yeah.
So it's not just the quality of the music that you're putting up for licensing, it's the utility of
Absolutely.
what you put up. That's really interesting,
That's
man.
a very
I had
smart
no
way
idea
to
about
work.
that. That's really cool.
Yeah, I think that, and I think, you know, maybe you guys know who Craig Alvin is or not.
I do not.
He's he's another legend engineer. He's maybe like the biggest hero of mine. I'm obsessed with people who can make sounds feel like something.
I'm very much into that, but
what a Jedi skill set, right? And so Craig Alvin, he's an engineer. He worked on Casey Musgrave's Golden Hour, if you guys have heard that record.
Oh, yeah. You know what? I know who that is. I was just reading an article about him today.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed. Anyway, he was actually one of the big reasons I moved to Nashville. I worked on a record with him, and he was so kind and just like, hey, man, because I went to school at Belmont, and I didn't tell anybody this, but I kind of left town with my tail tucked between my legs. My guitar professor just told me that I would never make it as a musician, and I believed him. And
what a dumbass that guy is.
Well, you know, I failed the school. I failed the music school there, and I couldn't read music. And what I like to say now is that, you know, I made it 2 years before they figured out I couldn't read music. And it's like, I had such a good ear that I was faltering behind the system, but still sticking in the game until they made me sight read, and it was just a disaster. But I left town thinking this guy's right that told me I could never be a musician. And a couple of years later, I was working on a project with Craig, and he's so sweet, man. He's so funny. He's so gifted. It's like, you know, what more can you say about the guy? Everyone who knows him loves him. And he's so great in the tracking environment. There are these, when you do it for a living too, you start to realize like some people have this extra gift to make it pleasant and fun. And some of the funniest people in Nashville are the full-time session players. Like, there's something that's extra about how enjoyable they are to be around. Craig's one of these guys. And he asked me, he was like, hey man, like, would you ever move to Nashville again? Like, I think you should give it another shot. And that earworm just stuck in my head, and that's the reason why I'm back. Like, plain and simple. So love you, Craig. And I'm trying to think of why I started telling this story. Why did I start telling this story?
It doesn't matter.
Oh man, because we're talking
podcast.
about
Things don't have beginnings or ends. So it's just ever evolving.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that we can talk about is I know exactly where I was headed. So I worked on a record with him that he was gracious enough to mix, and it never actually saw the light of day, to be honest. But one of the reasons why the whole process was really disorganized, and we sent him the files, and he called me. He was like, man. He was like, what is this? I was like, what do you mean? He's like, I just opened a session with like 80 tracks. He's like, they're labeled so poorly. It's going to take me 3 hours to even understand and rename all these files so that I can mix them.
Yeah.
And it was a really big come to Jesus moment where it was like, oh, wait, if I want to be doing this professionally, like I'm going to have to change the way I do things.
Yeah.
And
do you write what mic you used, or do you just say DI or mic?
I'll just say DI or mic.
Okay.
If the producer's really curious, like, you know, some guys want like the ribbon and the
Some guys
SM57.
don't want to know.
Yeah, other guys don't care. You know, it's a big thing, and you know.
Yeah, they just hear it and they're like, "I'll do this to this sound."
Yeah, yeah. And what I've learned a lot is, you know, most of the time the 57's good enough. You know, it's like the ribbon mic is cool for some dimensional bloom, but it usually gets suppressed. Like that thing that happens with a ribbon, because a ribbon is basically an eardrum, you know, so like. It fluctuates differently at different frequencies, and that's why it like pulls it into 3D. I never have heard a digital preamp interface scenario that actually captures a ribbon the way that it should.
So I've got, I had a ribbon on your guitar today.
Yeah.
I usually pull it back somewhere between 3 dB and 5 dB compared to where the 57 is at.
Yeah.
And then it's off axis. So like
Nice.
the ribbon does the job that it does best, which is capture the low end, and the 57 does the job that it does the best, which is capture the high end. You know, so it's center cone, and but I agree about that ribbon thing, man. Like I actually have an analog preamp at my house, and sometimes I'll put a 57 without the analog preamp, and then I'll run the ribbon through the analog preamp.
Yeah.
For that reason.
Yeah, it's interesting, man, because it's like, it's not, I don't know how to describe what I'm hearing except Saul Philcox. He's a great guitar player. Has he been on the show?
Yeah.
Yeah, Saul's amazing, man. And
He was here the day that he got his guitar stolen at 8 and got him back by 3.
Wow, yeah, everyone in Nashville was like ready to go to arms for him.
You are listening to the Gear and Beer Podcast. Today's episode is sponsored by Bobby Jam's Kitchen. Want to take your home cooking to the next level? Need new recipe ideas or meal inspiration? Like, follow, and subscribe to Bobby Jam's Kitchen on YouTube and Instagram at Bobby Jam's Kitchen. Cook your food and eat it.
So Saul comes up and he's posted something about how when he's recording to get like a dimensional effect to his mixes, he's had to change up his gear. And I don't remember exactly what he pointed to and what he was saying, but it caused me to like inspect my digital emulation stuff and be like, okay, how is what he is saying true about what I've heard? And I've had that frustration where it's like I'll work with guys who work all in the box, and there's some amazing plugins out there. And don't get me wrong, like there's so much probably that I don't even know that I can't speak on, but what I am speaking on is what I've experienced. And it just feels like everything that's happening is all right in front of you. And then there are guys that use outboard gear, and because of the way everything's routed, I did a record in Kansas City in November with a guy named Jared Logan, who's an amazing drummer and producer. And we tracked for a whole day with all of his outboard gear turned off. And then he turned on the next day. He just routed all the signals to his outboard like selections that he just used as clean pre's for all the different sections. And all of a sudden, this song that felt like mushy and weird we just listened to it and it sounded like it just came to life, and we're like, what? All he did was he turned on the feature in Pro Tools that routes it to his outboard and back in. And there's something that happens, and it's like I only call it 3-dimensionality because that's what it feels like to me. It's like you can hear sounds and they're all just coming at you, and then it just sounds like noise, and then all of a sudden, like everything is
the
separation.
listening space is left and right and near and far, right?
Yeah.
And there's a whole spectrum of where things can sit, both left to right and near and far. So that's a huge landscape to like put things and have things come out.
It's wild.
And again, I'm extremely novice mixer myself and engineer, and just I'm not a novice at playing and creating parts. I'm a novice at doing them myself, and I constantly am asking him questions.
Yeah.
And he likes the in the box thing from the producer's standpoint, and I get that, and I understand how that totally makes a lot of sense, but that only makes sense to me working with everyone somewhere else.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think in the context of you and I talking about it, it's usually got to do with delay or reverb, and it's because of the moldability of doing it after the fact.
Yeah.
Like if you give me a signal that has delay or reverb attached to it, whenever I pan you as a guitar player, I'm also panning your delay and your reverb. Whereas I may want to pan your dry signal, but I may want to keep your wet signal stereo, which is why the aux in particular presents so many problems.
Yeah, sure.
You know?
Yep. And then
you got to get a few of them, man.
yeah.
Just get a few grand.
Well, then it comes down to also you can maybe, it's a line level out of the aux, so you could throw it into a stereo delay pedal and then take 2 ends to your interface, and there you go. You fix your problem. So it's like a little bit.
That's something that I literally have not even considered.
There you go. Look at us, gentlemen, just figuring things out on the go.
So I'm definitely going to figure out which mic I like, send one of them through the reverb and one of them directly into the interface, and I'm just going to start doing wet and dry of each part. And
that's a great idea.
Because, if somebody's, I don't send a lot of tracks out of here. I do some, and usually I just ask tell me what you are expecting from me, as every player always does from whoever's asking them for the track. And I'll ask, I have asked, do you want me to give you dry, or do you want you want what I hear?
Yeah.
And almost every time it's been just do whatever you want to do.
Right. Which is scary when you're working with someone new, but there are those guys that just trust you. And when you have that relationship.
Well, it's almost like they're calling you for a reason.
Yes.
Generally. Now, if you're working through a website or something where it's just like somebody that you don't know finds your page, somebody recommends them to your page, and you see your samples or whatever, and they're like, oh, that's the kind of vibe I'm looking for. Let me send this guy work. That's one thing. But I don't know if you do any of that. I don't. It's something I'm into, or that I've been looking into, but I haven't actually done. I know dudes that do that and make a lot of money and make a lot of cool art and do a lot of cool work through sites like you mentioned Music Bed earlier.
Music Bed's awesome, man.
Well, there's a bunch of other sites that are similar to that are just like for tech savvy artists who are looking to do something different with whatever they're generally pretty electronic and whatever project, but there's something.
Are you thinking about Splice, maybe? Is that kind of what you're thinking of? Or
no, I forget the name of it, man. There's a one in particular, and since I can't think of it, there's literally no way I'll ever will.
What's the church one? Is it that's not Music Bed? There's another one I feel like.
I don't know of another one.
Yeah.
Music Bed is the only one to me. Music Bed, you're my only one.
A friend of a family friend worked for this other site. I just can't remember what it's called.
Yeah. I'm sure there are a lot of different places. There's another, the licensing community is kind of endless. Like it is such
That's something I'm definitely trying to get into. That's kind of where I see myself going.
My man. Well, let's talk about licensing for a second. What do you want to know? As if I know anything at all. I will talk about, I've been thinking a lot about this. So my buddy, his artist name is DERAJ, DERAJ. His name is Jared Wells. He's a rapper.
London, you mind making a note?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Say that name one more time, please.
DERAJ, DERAJ. Jared spelled backwards.
Oh, okay.
Amazing rapper. Man, he's been in like NFL ads. He's been in movie trailers. Just, I mean, as one, even if he wasn't in that stuff, he's as cool as it gets. His music is amazing. And then also people recognize how cool he is, and he gets the success that he deserves. But I was talking to my buddies today, and he's doing this tutorial on what to do if you're in licensing and how to get started and all this stuff. And I was thinking about like, oh man, like there are a lot of people out there who want to know how to get started. And, check out his stuff. It's DERAJ, and I'm not sure how specific it is towards hip hop and rap that he's doing, but it's probably not. It's probably pretty generalized and stuff that anybody can glean from. But one thing I have noticed over the years, because the first time I was ever approached to do any song for licensing was probably 7-8 years ago. And it was a company that I shouldn't mention, but a really large licensing company, one of the most successful, I would say, in the entire industry. And one of their reps contacted me, and they said,
Volkswagen.
No. This is the actual music licensing company. So not a company that needs music.
It's Pfizer, isn't it?
The people that no.
ExxonMobil.
No. Check it out. It's not like an
Anthony
actual
Fauci's label.
It's kind of like it's a company that is the liaison between me and those companies, if that makes sense. So the people that like basically connect the parties that they get the phone calls from ExxonMobil, from Pfizer and all these people. And then they are like, hey, we have the perfect song for you. Check it out. So I was approached by one of those companies, and they asked me like, hey, can we wrap your stuff, blah, blah, blah. I basically went in this trial and error thing of like, trying to write songs to briefs and like, hey, we need a song that says this. What do you got? And then I would like write a song that day that was what I thought they needed. And man, I did that for months and nothing, like no luck at all. And then I started to realize, well, wait a second. Like I've had 6 months of these emails every day that I'm reading, and there are like consistent themes. Like, oh, there are things that they always need. So then my buddies and I, Taylor Matthews being a big one, and we've worked with DERAJ together. The three of us have worked together, and with another friend of mine named Evan Gibb, we started writing songs that were like, that felt production-wise like the requests that we were getting. And we were like, all right, well, if we can make a song that we think is cool, that nobody's asking for, then we'll just put it out. And then if we put it out and we think it's cool and it kind of feels like all these things that people are asking for, like, let's just do it for fun because we can do it all ourselves and then see what happens. And basically because of that adventure of like, I'm just going to make songs that I think are cool and songs that like feel like this certain genre that's necessary or that's asked for in this era.
You're taking the extremely pinpoint idea and giving it a swipe with a large brush.
Yeah. And honestly, man, like what happens is after you have a little bit of success, then you are approached to do the hyper-specific things. But if you're trying to get into it and you're writing to the hyper-specific briefs, chances are you will be last picked because they already have these large name artists that are also within the selection choices or whatever.
Sure.
And they're going to go for name brand awareness in the same sense that like, kids in high school want to wear Nikes. Why? Like they can get rack room shoes without a brand that are, made in the same factories without the label, but people want brand name awareness. And it's kind of like a little bit of a psychology game where I remember I was on hold for I'll just say it. I don't think I'm getting in trouble for this. I was on hold for a Disney movie trailer. And
what movie?
It was one of their Disney nature films. It was about dolphins.
Okay.
And I wrote the song with Evan Gibb and Kenny Fleetwood.
On Green Dolphin Street?
I don't remember what it was.
It's not that.
If you guys remember, it was released. It was out. And it was like, we were on hold. We were basically told we were going to have it, and then who beats us out? Like, it was on hold.
Ed Sheeran.
Yes, literally Ed Sheeran. So then,
Dolphin Reef?
like, how funny is it that you guessed it off the bat? Like, they're going to go for the Ed Sheeran because they can get Ed Sheeran. And then I was on another movie. My voice was selected for a film with Matthew McConaughey called The Free State of Jones. If you guys have seen that movie, that's out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So originally they were asking for a song that was going to make it into the film. They needed a white male soulful singer. The producer, he's a legend. His name is, oh my gosh, of course I'm going to forget it right now.
David Foster.
No. Oh man, it's so embarrassing that I can't think of his name because I'm just nervous.
Is it helpful for me to just listen?
David Attenborough.
Regardless, maybe I should just keep it nameless. I'm going to keep it nameless.
Yeah, sure.
But these legendary people asked me to sing this song, and I flew out to LA. They flew me first class. I sang it. It was in the movie. All the contracts were signed. It was there. And then the director decided, within the Western film genre, there's always the guy who takes out a guitar and sings in the middle of nowhere desert. And he was like, I just didn't feel like this modern movie would make that happen in a way that didn't feel cliche. So it was signed into the movie. It was going to happen and the money was going to be awesome. And then nothing. And it was like two big, like almost, really big checks. I can't even say, but like two almost amazing, posters on the wall, right? Then they just fall through the cracks. And it's like,
but you take 20 of those swings and you get one.
Maybe. Yeah. There are people who do that. But for me, I was so frustrated by those things happening. I was like, man, I'm just going to write cool songs that I love.
Yeah.
And if nobody else will sing them, that was another thing. I moved to Nashville to be a songwriter. So it was like, if nobody else is going to sing these songs, I'll sing them. Like,
so this is where Model Citizen came from?
Model Citizen's a project. I sing that project, and Taylor and I wrote a lot of the songs. Sometimes my buddy Evan joins in. We've just been homies for a long time, and we just write songs together all the time. We just know how to work well with one another. We'll usually pull in a producer for that. So we'll either pay out the producer if that's what they want, or we'll give them like a percentage of the song if they're interested in that. Now that other songs have been successful. Which is tool to have. It's really nice. It's kind of like, rather than having all this upfront cost and then just you either lose it if it doesn't do anything, or you get it back in greater reward if it does. But we've kind of figured out
that's kind of an arc too. It's like at the beginning that makes the most sense, and then as you go this way, the sense of that starts going this way, where it's just like, let me just pay you up front.
Yeah. And it's evolving, and it's always evolving. We're, because then there are also times where we think a project's going to be awesome, and then we'll make songs, and the producer will be in on a percentage base, and then the songs don't deliver the way that another project within the same moniker did, and then it's like, oh man, like we don't want to bum out this producer and like take advantage of him, so like we'll pay him outright next time, and we've done that, and it's kind of like this. There's no rules, man. Like we're all just figuring this out. Like,
do you create both instrumental and vocal music?
No.
Huh?
No, big no. You want to know why?
Why?
Looking at the camera, dramatic effect. Because the market is so saturated with instrumental music, it'll never get chosen. Now, here's what's funny. You ready? If you write a song with vocals on it and it's selected, the vocals will be muted immediately.
Why? Because they don't want to pay some sort of extra royalty for vocals, or what's the deal with that?
It's just I can't really pinpoint the psychology because I'm not a music supervisor. But imagine you are a soup, and imagine your job is to listen to 20 songs that you want to select for a particular movie scene. Think about how fatiguing that is, and then think about how like many thousands of instrumental songs are out there. They don't want to listen through that. I don't know. Maybe they do.
Probably becomes indistinguishable.
Well, I think that's what I think you're fighting too many similar artists. Yeah. And when you have a vocal persona, and this is what I believe has been truest about all my success, is people read a title And if they click on that title and in 10 seconds the song doesn't feel like the title, they're going to the next song. Because they've come to the equation with a specific need and then a specific idea before they even click you of what they want to hear. Because that's what it's all need-based. They're trying to build sonics around what the director or what the company is trying to promote.
So is the majority of what you're writing aimed in that direction, or do you guys? I'm sorry. What's the name of the
Model Citizen is one. Anderson is another that I sing. A part of a project called Sodven, which is a very European sounding falsetto, like lush cinematic strings based. That's sung by my friend Evan Gibb. Also a project that we have with Taylor. So it's so like ADHD, man. Like let's go back to it. Like, you know, I'm a part of R&B songs. I'm a part of country songs. I'm a part of rock songs. I'm a part of folk songs.
So actually, my question was going to be, so like, do you specifically write for pitch houses, or are you writing to? Well, so I guess
that's a good question.
It's a two-part question. Are you writing for a pitch house, or are you also writing stuff that your same pitch house is trying to both put in playlists and both on YouTube and Spotify and Apple Music and all that? Yeah. Is the answer probably yes to all of those things?
Well, that's actually a good question because, you know, different songs do more in certain environments. It's kind of like, would you put Captain D's Seafood next to Ruth's Chris Steakhouse? Probably not, because it's in a different neighborhood, different clientele, different demographic, blah, blah, blah. And there's not like, I mean, there's an inherent...
Some people want diarrhea, others don't.
I mean, I don't want to build it upon like any sense of dignity, but I want to say that like certain things sell to certain people that others don't. And when you're making a song for radio, for instance, and it's all about love and it's all about like what this person means to you, that's not going to probably go very far in an ad space or in a show.
Right.
Like shows might want sad songs. They might want things the exact opposite emotion that a radio song wants, you know? The radio wants upbeat. They want like jamming guitars and a lot of energy. And if it's not that, they're not going to place it because they don't want to lose listeners. And people on their drive in the morning to work, they want upbeat, they want to get going. So there's a certain need inherent to the outlet. Spotify playlisting is really fascinating because all of a sudden, like the polar opposite of what is doing well in the country music scene, as far as like number one radio single, which is what everybody in country wants. They don't care about streaming numbers. They want the radio hit because that's the most money.
Right.
And let's start and end there. Most people just care about the money that the song is going to make. And
that's evident in a lot of the writing and in a lot
for
of
Nashville.
It's evident based on the business model alone.
Yeah, which is fine. In
what was that last song that did good? Oh, let's do that. Let's how can we repackage that?
Mm-hmm. And that's like, you know, in some sense it's soulless and it's artless, and at the other sense it's like, wow, if I'm going to try to do this professionally, I need to understand that that's someone's motivation, and I can benefit from giving them what they want, even if it's not what I want to do with my art and with my vision for my musical career.
I think that you just said something that makes a lot of sense. Understanding the motivation of the person that you are trying to convince that your shit is cool, right?
Right.
That's something that a lot of people don't think about. And for me, I kind of... It's depending on what I'm doing. Like if I'm doing something for myself, like I'm always doing it for myself, and then I'm listening back and I'm saying, is this more than just for me?
Yeah, right.
And if it is, how, why, and what is that?
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I'm at, because I just have all these like, and again, it's instrumental music, and I don't have any like delusions of grandeur. It's like, I'm going to put out this record, man, and everybody's going to playlist it and blah, blah. But it's just like, I'm going to do it whether anybody listens to it or not.
Right. Well, the cool thing that's awesome now about like, you know, maybe this is like maybe an insider scoop, but like everybody's looking for minimalist, very calming sleep music, basically. and people who are putting
musical
that out.
ASMR.
Yeah, basically, like music to relax to. I mean,
That's kind of where I'm at.
There is a very specific request and need for that in today's climate. So I'd say go ahead and do it, man. And
I'm doing it no matter what. It's just like, it's a matter of how hard I lean in that direction.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I'm trying to do the programming drums thing just a little bit. It's not my favorite, but it does. There's something about programmed drums that's such a part of the modern musical vernacular these days that it doesn't feel as contrived as it once did, or it doesn't have to. And, all those things make me more open to all the different possibilities now. But it all comes down to me, like, even when I'm doing instrumental music, it's like, if I hear my girlfriend singing it downstairs or something, it's like, okay, I'm on to something.
Yeah, yeah.
Because, and that's where I'm at with the music that I write. I'm not just like doing a bunch of tapping and sweeping, or some shit. Like I try to make the music for me, take that music and shape it for whatever I envision it going.
Right. And the cool thing about the music industry, if you strip it from all of the, like, gatekeepers and all the people that are, like, letting you in based on whatever reason they're rating, because there are some really sincere people who are not money driven at all, and I would hate to paint those people that way. But strip the way the business works away from the equation and just take why people make music and why people make art. And there are so many different motivations in that. There are people who will change their motivations to try to get into that fence over there, to get into that gatekeeper.
Are you saying like the root motivation?
Yeah. Like, I have learned for myself, and basically what I'm aiming at here is that if I can say something clever and funny or sincere, if I can make someone cry, like if by the words I have selected, I can affect someone. I can't remember who.
That's more than just music, though. That's poetry. That's
to affect the quality of one's day. That is the what is it? What's the quote? To affect the quality of one's day. That is the highest of art. That's one of the dead guys. I can't think of who it is.
But it's absolutely
Henry David Thoreau.
It's absolutely correct and concise. But depending on the person, like me walking by you playing a dope lick in a bar on my way to or from a gig, or popping on the Jazzy Vibes playlist on Spotify and 6 songs in, it's a very specific kind of music that you're listening to. 6 songs in, some wicked line slips through the algorithm, and I'm like, yes, and like, then I'm excited. That kind of thing excites me.
Yeah.
So I realize that there's a lot less people like me than there are more like me, but it leads me to hold out hope that you can make art for you, and if you, as a professional, I mean, know all the things that you've been talking about and that we try to talk about on this podcast, understanding the both, like, what's the word I'm looking for? The realistic climate of the thing that you're trying to do.
Yep.
That's one of the corners of the triangle. Understanding the climate of what it is you're trying to do, connecting with the people in whatever it is that you're trying to do, and then actually creating something worthy of the first two things that you've already, if you're lucky enough to figure that out, what I mean?
It's crazy because it's just an equation that you have to figure out, man. Like, the Picasso was Picasso before the world saw him, and like Marcel Duchamp, who is kind of the opposite. Marcel Duchamp was a painter. He was an impressionistic painter, I guess you could say. was painting things like the I can't remember the staircase. That was this really famous one. And his art was so widely circulated and discussed amongst the art critics, which were like the Rotten Tomatoes of the day. They were like a pop culture phenomenon that everybody was going to the newspapers to read what the art critics were saying. Everybody was going to figure out what was being premiered at the World's Fair and all these things.
They're the modern day, or the not modern day Joe Rogan's podcast.
Exactly. That's a great way to think of them, man. Really, truly, it is.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
And they're wanting to see like what is to learn about today. What are people talking about today? And Marcel Duchamp, like completely a legend, turned a urinal over on its side, and in the guise of the highest of art at, I think it was a World's Fair, and I can't remember exactly where he debuted it, but all these art critics are around and ready to write this up and send it to newspapers across America, across the world. They see that this highly anticipated event is a toilet. And then they just go haywire. Everything goes crazy. And Marcel Duchamp intentionally was saying something to the art community, which is, these critics don't get to declare what art is. I do, because I'm the artist.
Deer and beer.
Yeah, let's do this. These are
And
stupid
by
questions.
hit play, I mean I'm
Back
going to
in.
hit record, which it's already recording. So
Just hit whatever, man. Just don't hit any kids and don't hit any ladies.
Amen.
Hit the slopes, bro. You know what I'm saying?
all right, cool.
Hit them streets.
Hit the showers,
Hit
maybe.
the showers, bro.
It's probably time to hit the shower.
Hit the showers.
I'm going to hit the fucking reset on this recording if you don't get
Okay,
started.
hit the reset. Let's go.
Hit the reset on these recordings, bro, if we don't get started.
Red light reset.
I used to be a real piece of shit. Nobody. Tim Robinson,
What was it
anyone?
like to change? Tell me how, please.
Nobody. Okay, that's okay. We'll talk more about that later.
Okay.
Renn Anderson,
Let's see.
I have for you these questions more than 3.
Let's go.
The first one is Metallica or Megadeth.
I'm going to answer this in the most disappointing way possible. I've never spent time listening to either.
I didn't ask that.
It's true. I would say by logo alone, Metallica, man. It's iconic.
Understood?
Fair.
I'm so disappointing to everyone watching now.
No one cares.
Okay.
Everybody just wants to know new things about new people.
I will say this. I remember being at a bar in North Carolina, and they were playing the latest Metallica record, which was recorded with like the orchestra.
Uh-huh.
And I remember looking to my friend and asking him, "What is this? This is the coolest thing I've ever heard." And he was like, "It's the new Metallica." So I would say Metallica for that reason.
There you
Imagine
go.
Dragons or Imagine Dragons?
Can I turn off my imagination for this next question?
Everyone just
Please.
turned off this podcast.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
My next question is jazz
Ooh.
or metal. I don't know if you noticed the theme. We're starting off with some either or questions.
I'm going to go with jazz, man. I never really was a big metalhead, as evidenced by the last question.
And that's fine. And I would those two, those are founding fathers of metal, but by no means what I would consider metal.
Like metal.
these
I gotcha.
days
I gotcha. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
myself. But they're definitely the conduit. Yeah.
Yeah, no car bomb.
They're no car bomb, which is this podcast's favorite metal band because it's my podcast.
Oh, my man.
Lyndon also likes them, but I don't know that he would call them his favorite. They are my current favorite metal band out there doing stuff.
Nice.
And we're going to take a road trip to Birmingham and go see them.
Hey.
Come on.
I was
dude.
going to say let's go, but I don't know
You
if
were
I want to
like,
go to a
I don't
metal
know if
show.
I'm going.
I'll go to a jazz show with you.
After this, I'm going to play you a car bomb song.
Okay, deal.
And then I'm going to play you those mixes, or just snippets. Live or session?
Session, man. I love and to answer your question, I used to hate putting in-ears in and hearing a click and not everything feeling like it was in the room. And then all of a sudden, when I adapted to that and I realized that the possibilities are endless, you show up to a live session, unless you're playing like a solo, like the 30 seconds of the song that you get to do whatever you want. And nowadays, it's usually you just play the record solo. So it's like, it's not even anything that you made. in the studio, if you are the guy creating parts, it's a totally different muscle. And that muscle is the one that I want to take with me to the grave. Like, I'd rather create and then forget and make something eternal that somebody else has to play than play something that another person was creating and then all I have to do is just do it. Like, there's no like soul to finger connection in playing something someone else wrote. But when you're in
I don't agree with that.
I would let you disagree.
For you,
I would let you disagree.
I would say I'll let you have that. But
yeah.
I mean, there's nothing like the connection of execution in a live setting, whether it's something that you wrote from your soul or something you play with your soul.
Yeah,
because they're two different things, but in my opinion, it kind of feels the same, does it not?
I guess for the people that it does feel the same, that's probably why they love live playing. For me, it's never felt the same. And that is why I should say, from my experience, I feel a deeper connection to the session environment.
No, that's fine. I'm just being devil's
I think also
I love that.
to go back to
another
the top,
depends.
it depends.
Yeah.
Well,
You know,
it
depends on who
It
you're playing
depends.
with.
It does. It really, truly does.
Like I play with an artist that the producer and the label and all the other people that matter more than me expect me to play every note from every solo of the songs that we play, but also the artist loves that me and the other guitar player can play and like make stuff up.
And by the way, this guy really can play. Lyndon,
Thanks.
you can play well, man. You sound
Thank you,
awesome.
man.
Yeah, I've got a couple.
He's not on the record here playing, but he's smoking.
Well, we did stuff. I've got a bunch of good gear and beer G&B jams. I've released 2 minutes of 40 minutes worth of jams from all the episodes. I just haven't exactly figured out what to do with that content.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
the one that we
Let's
did
make
was
this guy
fun.
famous.
We did 2. He's the only. He and I did 2. We're just like, because we're homies from way back, so like we usually just sit around and just do that.
Yeah.
No cameras or nothing. We're just like, except for instead of 2 takes of 2 songs at 4 or 5 minutes apiece, we would play the same song for 45 minutes and then move on to the next song.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
sure,
saying?
sure.
Just like really working shit out and like playing.
Yeah, fold on giant steps for
Yeah,
30 minutes. Yeah.
and we need to go back to that. I'm ready. I'm in practice mode.
I am too, man.
I'm like rededicating myself to become a student of the instrument, not just from like furthering my harmonic
enjoyment of life.
Yeah, well, and just like I'm about to start going back and like relearning all these Rush guitar parts that I loved, just because I love that band.
Yeah.
And they're extremely counterintuitive to how I play guitar.
Sure.
So it's just like going out there and making my brain do something it doesn't like to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyway, enough about me. No one literally.
Do you guys need a bass player?
Literally, no one cares about what I have to say. Speaking of bass player, jazz or precision? We already went through this.
Oh, man, this is an easy answer for me. I know that there are some who would claim that with a jazz, they can cover every genre. They can roll it to the neck pickup, turn down the tone stack, and then all of a sudden...
listeners.
Yeah. I mean, it's a thing. But there's something about that beefy... a great bass player in town. His name is Leland Nelson. He came over to my house.
I know Leland. We play together a lot.
Incredible bass player,
Yeah, we
right?
just played last week.
Like, just insane.
Killing.
And can do all the things that I cannot do as a bass player. And he's insane. But he picked up my precision bass that I have, which has the big 1.75-inch nut, whatever, basically feels like a baseball bat in the hand. And he was like, oh, man. He was like, I'd have to play a lot slower with this bass. And I think the personality...
I love picking up a bass and feeling like that.
Yeah, the
Leland's got some
personality.
chops, too,
Leland
man.
has serious chops, man.
Yeah.
Like, literally. Like,
But he's a J-bass guy, right?
J-bass guy,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think the way that I'm so confident with a precision bass is like, I'm just holding it down. Like, I don't have to play like a guitar player on the bass or whatever. You know what? I don't have to play with melodic information. I am just a bass player with a precision bass. And because I lack confidence, that is what makes me feel safe.
But you are playing with like with like harmonic consequence though.
Oh, for sure. I mean, there's definitely like an art to in fact, if anyone else is watching and wants to know the most valuable like 5-minute YouTube tutorial.
Keyword, operative word, if
anybody cares about bass.
You roasted the guest.
Now 3 people are going to actually go YouTube this. The Rick Biato bass playing tutorial. He is a legend.
Yeah,
man.
he's amazing, man.
He's incredible. The 5-minute, whatever it is, it's like maybe 7 minutes tops. The 5 minutes, 7 minutes, whatever it is, that he does his little like tips to learn on bass. It's the most valuable, like single sit down session you can spend in front of.
I'll put a link to it.
Please do. Honestly, like I texted Tom Bukovac. He's a legend. He's also a friend of mine. I was like, man, have you watched the stuff that Rick is putting up? He's putting up 30-second videos that are changing the way I think about music. He has also got, I mean, anytime I need to do anything in a session, I was miking an acoustic guitar the other day, and I was like, what am I going to do with my signal chain with what I have? And I just went straight to YouTube. I clicked Rick Beato, how to mic an acoustic guitar. In 3 minutes, I was sending off the best files that I've ever sent of acoustic guitar because it was a producer I'd never worked with, and I knew, like, this has to be like something that he knows is perfect. It's not something that I can send to my buddy because
something that stands out. You want to call you back.
Exactly. It was a producer that I needed to impress, not just be like, oh, this is good enough. I can work with this because I trust the producer's mixing skills. It was like, no, I have to make sure this is mix ready. Rick Biato, man, what a legend. And
he's got a lot of information.
He's dude. What does he not do? He's like producer, mix engineer extraordinaire.
He doesn't
guitar
suck.
player extraordinaire, bass player extraordinaire, and
he seems to like and like whatever. I would love me too, but he seems to love himself a little harder these days than he used to.
Man, but here's the thing: when I watch him, I don't get his personality as much as I get. This guy, his personality is transparent to his skill set.
I like to watch him interview too. Like I watched the Metheny interview and the Sting interview.
Oh, okay, I haven't seen that yet.
Well, they're not the same, but he within a couple of weeks released an interview with Pat Metheny, and
I'm trying to get him to do one with Tom. That's what I was texting Tom about. I was like,
really?
man, you need to have him interview you. Like,
he totally should, man. You know who should interview Tom Bukovac? That's me. No,
let's go.
No, but he should come do this. I'll bake him some bread and buy him all the Rolling Rocks.
You listening, Tom? he's like you're gonna have to get some more Rolling Rocks, man.
I got plenty of Rolling Rocks.
That's what he would say.
I got plenty of Rolling Rocks, and I will give White Mountain a run for their money because I'm a baker and I'm also a man of portly aptitude, and I know what good bread is.
Food and beer is the currency on this podcast.
Honestly,
that's true,
man.
There's chili to be had. Let me ask you a few more questions.
Let's go.
Let's go downstairs and have chili that has now been simmering for about 5.5 hours.
Ooh, it smells so good, you guys.
Single coil or humbucker?
I'm a single coil guy. Here's the thing: you can always roll back a single coil's tone knob and get something close to a humbucker. It's not the real thing, really. But on a gig and even in the session, man, I think I can get more of these like larger than life dog hair frequencies that to me make all the difference in feel, right? Out of a single coil.
Makes difference in mix too.
Absolutely.
I'm
a single coil guy. But I love people who are humbucker guys or girls. I mean, whatever. Like that's an idiot thing to say.
Guys, gals, or non-binary pals.
Yeah, taking the 90s lingo into the new era. But like people who
I was quoting Jake Kenji Lopez.
Oh, nice.
Lopez Alt.
People who prefer humbuckers, like they've figured it out and they've got their thing, and I don't want to take that away from them. I think for me, when I pick up a humbucker guitar, it's with a smaller speaker, 10-inch speaker, 8-inch speaker, whatever. All of a sudden, I feel right with it.
Let me ask you this. So
let's go.
You just generally don't use them?
I don't.
I was just posing it like you have to choose. I'm a equal opportunity. Like what kind of pickups you got?
I think
what can we do to get a? And I don't really. My guitar collection doesn't really reflect that.
So actually, let me talk about my guitar currently, and not that that's like whatever. Maybe
no, this thing rules. It plays great.
So
soft V.
The reason I love this guitar is because the bridge pickup on this guitar is 10K as a single coil, which is basically a broadcaster pickup. So it's like an early 50s Tele wind. The middle of the neck are more 50s era, and they're wound by a guy named Ron Ellis. Some people will know who he is, some people won't. He's got a legend of his own.
Any fidelity nerds will know who that is.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, I have 4 sets of these pickups because I am grossly obsessed. And you know, they cost way too much money to have that many sets of his pickups. But then once you have them and once you play any other guitar, it's just like, what's missing? And he's ruined me for that. So I wouldn't say necessarily single coils in general. I've played some really good single coils. Mojo Tone makes some great single coils. KLEIN pickups make some great single coils.
I got several.
Absolutely.
I love KLEINs. I've had a few guitars with KLEINs, and I've always regretted when I've sold the guitars, but that's the life we live.
I almost sold my PRS before I put KLEINs in it.
Oh, wow. You put KLEINs, humbuckers in your PRS?
58 and a 59 PAF before he had the machines.
Smoking.
That have that. So he was making these 58, 59 PIFs, and then he bought this machine to like correctly make the corners of the covers.
Oh, wow.
Like that kind of a detail.
Yeah, obsessed. You can tell that guy's obsessed.
I think that the machine cost him like $30,000 too. I have that machine, non-wax potted 58, 59, as authentic as the man knows how to make. And then in my old workhorse Tele, I have an American Standard, 2000 something. 2005 or something like that. I put his Epic 52s that he modeled after Brad Paisley's 52 Tele pickup that he sent to like 5 different labs and have them like analyze all the composition of all these different parts and shit.
That's what Ron Ellis does. Is that what he does? He's a chemical analyst by day and a pickup winder by night. So he puts things under like electron microscopes all day long.
Oh, wild.
And then, you know, that's
discover the true makeup of whatever it is you're trying to replicate. I mean, that's the game.
Yeah.
And
there's all kinds
of equipment at your disposal probably makes it easier.
I've never talked to Ron about it, and I've never talked to Chris, which Chris is doing like crazy stuff. Like he's sourcing
I don't know
specially
if he
made
still is, but he was
magnets.
originally in Denton, Texas.
I think he's a legend in the sense that I've played some pickups from like, oh no, this is the real thing. And I've gone through such a black hole of pickup
I've got pickups over here in my drawers that are so old and so early in the beginning of his making pickups that he does not even remember them.
Wow. I'll buy them from you.
And I've got it in this
get those.
black Mexi Strat from the 90s.
Yeah.
They are pickups just labeled vintage, and he's like, vintage?
I
don't know what that is.
Right. I think, man, Ron Ellis makes the best pickups in the world, in my opinion. And I've tried everyone who's like said that there's someone else who does it better. I think Chris KLEIN is doing amazing stuff. Is that Chris KLEIN? Am I thinking of KLEIN guitars maybe? But I might be mixing up the names.
There's a bunch of Chris KLEINs.
But
Chris KLEIN is the name of the guy that does KLEIN pickups.
So Chris KLEIN pickups doing something amazing.
At least of Denton, Texas.
Amazing dude. I mean, freaking crazy. What's the British pickup? Bare Knuckle. I think those are some of the best pickups in the world.
I'm not familiar with those.
Oh, you got to check those out. They're amazing.
I'm gonna do it.
I got you.
And then there's one other that I was thinking of, and I can't remember.
Wait, say the British one again.
Bare Knuckle pickups.
Bare Knuckle. Okay.
Barnacle pickups.
Barnacle. Oh man.
Had the barnacle.
Oh, the Barnacle. There's one other, and I can't think of who it is now, but if I think of it, I'll remember. Anyway, those.
If you do think of it, you will have, in fact.
I do like Lawlers too. I like Lawlers, believe it or not. But there's
Lawlers in my Nash that I don't like. So I have a TK54. You know that model?
Yeah.
The Keef or whatever. The humbucker in the neck. So my buddy Boo, podcast episode number 1 guest, and my buddy Mark Lettieri, podcast episode number 5 guest. We all have the exact same guitar.
Yeah.
And both of their neck pickups, which are supposedly the same, sound better than mine. So I'm pissed.
Oh, money. That's funny.
But they're all Lawlers.
They're all Lawlers, man.
Lawlers typically sound really good. I feel like the ones that he used to make for Nash back when
2007.
Nash was touching guitars. Yeah.
2007.
I was going to say even as recently as like 2010, 2011.
Dude, the ones in my 2010 are fucking clutch.
I had a Nash
2012?
2010.
Oh, yours is a 2010?
Yeah.
Mine's a 2012. I don't know. I know things were different about the the process at that point, but my guitar is still an amazing guitar, and
It is.
I bought it because I was like, oh, really, that price? Oh, I'm buying
That guitar
And
is the shit, man.
I had every intention of reselling it, and then I was like, yeah, I guess I can't.
Oh,
I can't sell
Arcane.
this.
That's it. Arcane pickups.
Arcane pickups.
Arcane Experience pickups, man. Those are insane. In fact, the reason why I got led onto them is because Tom Bukovac, we were talking about pickups, which, what a nerd question. But he was like, man, if you ever find like an original set of Arcane, those are absolutely ridiculous. And I was like, all right, man. I started listening to sound clips online. You can hear it even on YouTube videos.
Really?
If you look up Arcane Experience shootouts, there's some videos of like one Strat with 7 different pickups in it. And I can't remember who made it, but thank God for that guy. And the Arcane
I've seen videos
sets,
like that. That is quite the undertaking.
That's some
Right.
effort right there, man.
That is some niche video making.
yeah, seriously, man. For guys like us. But you know,
You're
it's funny.
capping at 40K.
For real.
And there's this whole other realm of like humbucking guitars. Like there's probably the best humbucking guitar pickups made by someone that I don't know. You know, I've had a set of Tom
Oh,
Holmes.
Bill
I've
up
had
there in Flint, Michigan?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Bill Lawrence.
No, I was just that was
That's somebody else.
I was just like saying this guy that nobody's ever heard of.
Yeah, sure, man. It's such a
I
weird.
created a character. His name is Bill. He's from Flint, Michigan.
Okay, right on. Well, I mean, there's a whole nother world of pickups, basically. But because I love single coils, and I answered your question the way that I did, I have been on the hunt for what is the best single coil. And for me, the Ron Ellis 5060 set with the hot bridge pickup is like the ultimate. And I have 2 more sets of this pickup set because I love it so much. And the funny thing about it is...
Have you tried putting it in a telly or something?
No, I haven't.
You should.
I should get
Fuck around
weird.
with that.
I should get weird. But what I love about it is
Because there's a lot of different kinds of single coils, not just Strats.
right, true. And I have a really great Danocaster Telecaster that I love. It has the Buds Tele set, the Buds Dano set. And
okay.
It's like 2 magnets or whatever, like the Alnico 5 on the bass 3, and then Alnico 2, I believe, on the unwound 3.
Oh.
And it's also overwound. It's another broadcaster like bridge pickup. And I actually bought that guitar from Bukovac, and it was the one that like made him sell his Esquire. It was a good enough telly that he sold his 52 to Dave Cobb. So then he thought he would never get rid of that guitar, but then he sold it to me, which thank you, Tom, again. But it's awesome. And that's maybe my favorite telly
That's where
pickup.
I got this Marshall from was Tom.
Oh, nice, man.
I swapped him a Chieftain.
Right on. So, but I went searching for Strat pickups are such a thing, man, because I put the buds in a Strat and it wasn't right for me. It was a little too. I will say that for a softer body wood, I had an ash body Strat. It was a little too bright. And I think on an alder body, it would have been right, but it wasn't right for the ash body Strat thing, which is what I love. And again,
It's a very open
a lot of
sound.
depends, man. A lot of depends.
Yeah, that's the way it is. And I appreciate your in-depth thought about my silly questions.
Yeah, sorry.
No.
We're trying to wrap up here,
is
guys.
great.
No,
Golly.
we're still going to. Real quick, I have like 3 questions left for you.
I bet you get 2 out of us.
No, because one is okay, so here's what we're gonna do. We're done with the either or. So
Okay,
you may
all right.
be right. Maybe there's only 2.
Okay, let's go.
I want to start with off the top of your head, no deliberation, 3 Desert Island records. Go.
Records. Oh, wow. Off the top of my head, I know this is going to surprise a lot of people,
Hopefully.
but
I
no guitar on this record, really.
Doesn't matter.
John Bellion's The Human Condition, number 1.
Okay.
Pop record, so wacky.
Are you making notes of this? Thank you.
I'll say this. I'll go back in time. That was, of recent years, the most influential.
Back in time.
The most influential on me and the path that I took as a musician. Before that, I'm going to go with Ray Lamontagne, Till the Sun Turns Black.
Okay.
And then that's totally a different vibe, like the most like gorgeous, like acoustic analog, gutsy, sad guy, tell you songs that make your heart break. Totally different. But that was a huge influence on my playing and my songwriting and what I wanted to do as an artist, as a musician who applies my skill set to anything. Upon that, I've got two that I want to mention. Can I get by if I blaze through them?
Yeah.
Amos Lee, I think it was a self-titled record.
I think I've seen you talk about this record
Man,
online or something.
I used to
before.
take that album. I mean, that was when CDs were a thing.
I listened to it because you posted about it or something.
Man, I mean, the record with
It's very vibey,
I
very chill.
am at ease in the arms of a woman. That song and that album.
Yeah.
I think it was self-titled.
That's the first tune, right?
Oh man, that was later on in the album context.
Oh, okay.
But it had so many songs on it. I mean, it had oh golly, I've been a big fan of Amos Lee for a long time, but that record by far.
I'm sorry, the name of the record again?
I think it was self-titled. I could be wrong.
Self-titled. Okay. And what's the?
I'm pretty sure I know which one he's
It was.
talking about.
I think. Man, it had this one solo, like that guitar solo on "Arms of a Woman." It was so, like, sultry and off and juicy, and it was like, what? How can a guitar feel like that? And all of a sudden, I was like, I want to play guitar like that guy. And I don't
Arms
even.
of a Woman is on the self-titled.
It's on the self-titled. That's the record.
That's it. Okay.
That's the one, man. I used to take that into the car with me, and I remember I would play it on repeat all the way through. Because back then it was only a repeat all. It was just like you could only start the record over at the end. They didn't have like repeat track like they have now. It was repeat from the beginning to the end, and I would just leave it on repeat.
Are you
And
talking
then-
physical vinyl?
I'm talking about the CD-ROM, like a CD disc,
Oh, gotcha.
and not ROM, but a CD. And then I would take it inside.
I was like, oh.
I would take it inside the literally with me. It was my keys or my wallet. I would not go anywhere without it in my pocket, in my like jacket pocket. I would carry the CD with me as if it were my keys, as if it were my wallet. It was that important to me.
Just in case you needed to
show
somebody
someone?
or
Oh, yes.
remind yourself.
Oh man,
or-
I was like, I was so obsessed. That record really meant a lot to me. That would be on the Desert Island. And if I had to pick one more, it's a really
You can't, but go ahead.
number 4 honorable mention. K.D. Lang, Hymns of the 49th Parallel.
Huge KD fan.
That album and the sounds on it and the arrangements on it and her singing on it and like everything is one of the most perfect albums ever made, in my opinion.
My introduction to K.D. Lang, I think I was probably about 9 or 10, and my dad brought home the Reclines record with pulling back the reins, trying to remain tall in the saddle.
Yes.
What a great song. So I had heard that record, and then fast forward to I'm an adult, and I'm like, I heard it somewhere in like I Shazammed it or something. I was like, oh yeah, I remember my dad used to listen to that. And then I just started wandering off, and like, she's got some of the most progressive, like, huge songs ever. Like, I'm gonna blank on it.
I've done that a number of times.
Constant craving.
Yes.
That tune, that is super progressive. Okay.
Yeah.
I have one last question. We have
let's go.
less than 30 seconds for
Let's
you to
do
answer it.
All right, done.
You're in the King's Court, Renn Anderson of Wilmington, North Carolina. Albert, Freddie, BB, or King's X? Choose one.
I'm gonna say
and choose
BB
now.
King, man. He just played like he meant it, and that meant something for everybody.
Amen. You heard it here first and last on Gear and Beer. Make sure that you go to the links below and follow Renn on Instagram. He is a meme lord. I did not mention that earlier. He is a meme
Everybody
lord.
loves to laugh. I'm going to keep you laughing.
He's a meme lord. He's got great insight. He's a fantastic dude and musician. Make sure and follow and subscribe to this podcast if you do not already. Yes. And Instagram links and all of the fun stuff will be below. Again, my man, Renn Anderson.
Cheers, brother.
Cheers, bro.
Thanks for having me out, guys.
Gear and Beer.
Cheers,
Until
brother.
next time, Linda
Yeah.
McCarty, twisting and tweaking, and bye.
Thank you for listening to the Gear and Beer Podcast. Make sure and subscribe and turn on notifications for our channels, and if you haven't already, follow our Instagram and YouTube channels. We truly appreciate your support and ask that you please tell anyone you know whom you think might be interested in our podcast about gear and beer to help us grow and continue bringing in great guests from around the industry and beyond. Thanks again, and until the next episode.